All right, so let's go to the questions. And we have a question. Leslie, can you read off the question?
Yeah. This is from Terry. It's not clear to me how the collaborations work. Is there one person who is the lead and the others carry it out? How do you ensure that the others feel they have been a meaningful part of the we? Can you speak to the various types of collaboration? And I think everybody has a different experience, so we probably all ought to mention our approaches.
Okay.
So you want to start, Leslie?
Sure. For mine, the big issue was getting everybody on the same message from the state chancellor's office to the CEOs, to the trustees, to the students, to the classified, and to the faculty. It actually went to the Democratic Convention in California. It was a big turmoil. So the statewide steering committee, which consisted kind of representatives of each of those groups, were really focused on getting the message on one message, which was keep the doors open, keep the fees low. Not no fees, not free college. It was keep the fees low. And then coordinating all these buses that came from all over California, parking lots. I mean, it was all of that. But the advantage of that was it gave the complete artistic freedom to the local colleges. So in City College of San Francisco, we bought 10 statues, and we had a big meeting between, we have 10 campuses. So we had one statue per campus, and all of the students met. We had the political science students meeting with the art students. And for example, the Chinatown campus came in with this precise brush painting and a poem written in Chinese script. And then the high school students came in, painted their statue black, put fuck Bush, put a chain around it, and put some black wings on it. So very different approaches. There weren't any rules, but with the statewide leadership and the funding focused on the bigger issues, it gave almost complete artistic freedom to do what they wanted. At Laney, I think it was slightly different. In Peralta, it was really given to individual students to give the freedom of what they wanted to paint.
I think that I tried to address the kind of collaboration we did. I think that I was trying to show how just working with two other artists, how we arrived at some of our decisions by giving up a part of our, we started with our own idea, and then we would communicate our individual ideas and talk about how we could use something from each of our individual ideas to create a larger whole. But then when we took our pieces out into the world, we had to collaborate with governments. For example, in Monterey, we had to meet with the city council and explain to them how we wanted to work. And we considered that part of the collaboration. And when I built my fish, I felt like working with William, who created the understructure for the fish, the welded form. He had some of his own ideas, which emerged. So the piece actually became a collaboration between us. And then in addition, in order for us to construct it, we had to invite people to come in. And lots of people had ideas about how to help make it easier, faster, better, more colorful. So I think it's working together and being able to give up some of what you thought it was supposed to be if somebody has a better idea. So collaborating is allowing yourself to be open to changing your vision to create a larger whole.
Yeah, trusting.
Lisa?
Yeah, I'm even curious at this point if that's kind of answered the questions or if there's some other particular nuances in the question that you say, wonderful, thank you. Yeah, okay. I feel that I did talk in my time about the nature of my projects, which were the mural from the start of let's do a mural. It was a collaboration. It was a group thing. And then we did ultimately, I mentioned Leanna, who is on the call right now. I'm glad you're here, Leanna. You might have some words to add, was the lead artist. And I hope that we were all respectful of that fact and wanted to honor that. But Leanna, do you have something to jump in with?
I mean, I would say it was it was just so much more fun the way we did it. You know, if it had just been me on my own, there's no way I would have done it at all. So having a group of people that, you know, we all kept each other accountable, and we, you know, sort of forced us all to, this was obviously volunteering on our own time. And so we were all like, we're going on this day every week, and we're putting in this many hours. And the creative part, you know, I felt very respected. Everyone always sort of asked me, you know, what do you think about adding this or changing that? And what's your vision for this? And so I think it was helpful that we had like one person with sort of like the lead. It probably would have been chaotic if we didn't have that. Which I think we're experiencing a little bit on our next mural, our current mural. So yeah, that's about all I'll add to that.
Yeah, I could add just briefly that with the flood level marker project, there were so many collaborators that it was easy to give people areas of expertise. The floodplain managers worked with the city on licenses, and I gathered 2 other artists that I worked with on the design, and the fundraising was in peer group. And then we all kind of reported. So I love that you both mentioned regular meetings, meeting times, and everybody committing to a certain amount of time to spend on the project. And there are always differences of opinions. And have to be able to back down and let other people take the lead occasionally.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add for the Life Reimagined project that we've had so many conversations that at this point, I'm not sure any of us really know whose idea was what. And to me, that's kind of when it's really come together, is when not only do you forget, but it doesn't matter, because it's not about the individual ownership. It's about what you're doing together. And there's, you know, it's a hard to pinpoint moment when that happens, but both the projects I talked about have had that, I think, experience.
If there are questions from those of you, if you'd like to, you can just open up your screen and raise your hand on the screen. That we don't have to do it through the chat, because we'd like to get a little bit of a dialogue going.
Sure. And even if you don't have questions, we'd be interested in your comments.
Right. And maybe projects that you're working on.
Right. Anybody out there?
I know Deanna's. Oh, good. Lauren?
Hi. Unfortunately, I got into the meeting a little bit late, so I missed a couple of the presentations. I do have a question for you, Mary. I'm working with the city here in my town in Lambertville on a high water marker project. In Lambertville, New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm an appointed member of our newly formed resilience team, and we're working on a high water marker project. And I'm wondering, you know, we're a small town, not Boulder's probably a much bigger population than what we have here. But it's definitely a contentious issue. And I wonder, in projects like that, working with within community and with a number of different stakeholders who have maybe they're on different sides of the fence, you know, having a high water marker, will it like affect our property values? Or, you know, we live in a state where you don't have to disclose whether your house has flooded to, you know, potential buyers. You know, did you come up against any issues like that in working through that project in Boulder? And how did you deal with those?
Well, it's interesting because Mary Miss, who's a very well-known sculptor, was in an eco show at the same time that I was planning this. And she got paint cans and painted them blue. And then one day she took them all over town and had them at the level of the flood, predicted flood level. And it was at Naropa, and it was at the high school, and it was at the student housing. And it was all unpermitted. And I just thought it was a fabulous project. I helped her, but I was kind of jealous because we've been going through getting all of these permissions, but ours is permanent. So that's the difference. Ours is a very permanent project. And so it took time to convince people. Store owners, business owners are scared to have a mark that shows how high the water is going to come. But there's some ways of actually talking to people. And I would say not necessarily the floodplain managers, but make allies with people in the community who are gentle and not going to pick a fight, who are interested in talking about this process and talking about what are the risks if you don't show where the high flood is, and be very gentle about it. And that's kind of how we did it. And it took us 3 years to get 2 to 3 years to get the permits. How long have you been working on your project?
It's fairly new. The resilience team was just formed. Sorry, I muted myself because my toddler has just walked in the room. The resilience team formed, I think, just in April, and it was in response to the remnants of Hurricane Ida that came through and dumped 10 inches of rain in 3 hours over a number of areas in the East Coast. And, it was pretty unprecedented kind of, flash flooding that inundated, the stormwater infrastructure.
Well, if you'd like to call, have a Zoom with me privately, we can brainstorm some tips.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
National groups like the Floodplain Managers Association and the Natural Hazards community that might be able to give you some support.
Okay, great. I would love that. Thanks, Mary.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Oh, thanks.
But I do want to talk about the conflict thing, because I think when you do large scale an important public art like this, you're going to encounter that. We were lucky that we spent the time to build that as much unity as we can. Right now, the community college system, all different constituent groups are all fighting with each other, and it's horrible to circle the wagons and focus inward. But I will tell one story that's kind of funny. In East Bay College, I'm going to leave it nameless. The art students painted the statues, and then the political science students decided they didn't like that kind of abstract art, so they painted over what art students did, and made it very realistic. And so when we went to Union Square, the only time, and the thing traveled all across the state and everything, the only time anything happened where those two statues were stolen from Union Square. And my guess is that somebody said, well, you may have done that, but now we're getting them back. Anyway, but I think that the point is you have to be flexible. You have to trust, and you have to just move forward and not get bogged down and hope that most of your team will be fighting together and trying to help mitigate the disagreements and for the greater good. You just have to hope that will happen, because there's always going to be disagreements. It's impossible not to have that.
Deanna, did you have your hand up?
No, but hi, everybody. I was just thinking that in addition, something that was helpful to me in a project early on was to start making lists of all the stakeholders, because, I started out proposing an idea and working with the Department of Ecology and our local county parks. But one of the things that I got wrong, being new at this kind of work, was that I didn't realize how many stakeholders there were, and everyone from people who walk their dogs in the area will have an opinion and feelings about it. And so whatever you do with that, but I was blindsided a little bit a couple times. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, I agree. Getting all the stakeholders you can find at the table from the beginning is the best, I think, way to start out, if you can. It makes it hard because you got the no votes right in the room, but.
Well, and if you find the right person who's somewhat knowledgeable or friends with a stakeholder who's really cautious and not trusting, because a lot of it's building up trust. I would say that our 3 years was mostly, is this group really going to produce? Are they really going to do what are they really listening to us? Listening is huge. You need to listen to everybody, even if they completely disagree with you.
It's sort of like marriage.
Only with lots of people.
Well, I always think of bridge building, that we're artists are bridge builders. And then sometimes the visual world, like one of the artists had been trying to make bronze plaques that would go around the city that would show the flood risk at each building. And people were concerned that they wouldn't be able to get insurance. But by doing something in the community space on public land, that was less challenging for people, for the business owners.
Yeah, and I also think you have to be a little bit flexible. Like example, I mean, most of the faculty groups were for free community colleges. And they did compromise and go with keep the fees low, which is not exactly the traditional political opinion that the unions had for a long time. But they were willing to, in order to get the CEOs and the trustees and the state chancellor to join in with us, people were willing to compromise on that message. And I think that's incredibly important, that you have to not lose. I mean, keeping the fee lows is worked. Wasn't perfect, but it worked.
Is there anybody who we haven't seen, Terry or Brianna or Yuko, want to make a comment? Christina?
Thank you so much, but I have to in and out. Bringing a chunk of time to sit in front of screen Sunday afternoon isn't that great. But I kept telling Sharon and Andrea the Echo Art Matter class. That's what my lifesaver for the under COVID. So Echo Art Matter class itself is artwork, collaboration, and the student or the faculty is just incredible work. I'm so fortunate to sit through. And Andrea can tell me how depressed I was. So I kept saying, I don't have any homework done. My backyard is the canvas, something like that. But it's came a long way. And so it's just to keep a little fire. That's my motto. Just so thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Yuko, thank you so much for saying that and for pointing out that the collaboration of Sharon's and my teaching, I hope Sharon is still here, that collaboration of teaching together with her has created this incredible class. And so thank you for saying that, Yuko.
And I just have another thought about the whole idea of collaborations, is that some personalities are not good at collaborating, and that's okay. Yeah. And I know a lot of glass artists that work in their field, and they work with a small team, and that's what they do. And their artwork gets translated in completely different ways by other people. So there are studio artists who just they're making imagery, and the imagery can be used by other organizations in very powerful ways or helpful. But you're not actually like collaborating with them on projects. So I think it takes a certain kind of personality to be interested in this.
Somebody started to say something about, you know, was there a leader and followers and things like that. And I think that there's a lot of different ways you can organize it, but that it helps a lot to actually try to bring that topic up. Because one of my first artist-scientist collaborations, we were, you know, we were supposed to have 6 months to work on a project and share information, and we did, and it was really fascinating, and I got a lot out of it. It made, you know, it helped me a lot in thinking about ecology. But we were about 6 months, we were several months into it before I even questioned the paradigm of, you know, him, male, smart scientist who has the information, and me, female artist whose job is to convey his information. And in the same project, there were several different pairs, and apparently about half of the pairings didn't even make it to the project. But one of my friends whose project went really successfully from the start was they had the opposite paradigm about their roles, as the male was the artist who was doing bead work and working with the scientist. And talking about it later afterwards, we got to that understanding, me and my friend, and it just interested me that this was, you know, maybe 15 years ago, but that I hadn't even questioned that part of an art science collaboration. So yeah, just throwing out their lessons I learned. It's really nice to kind of have that out front if you can, that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lisa said that not everybody has to know everything. Did you say that, Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, that you don't know the answers to everything, that you are building the landing strip and landing the plane at the same time when you're doing these kinds of things, and to kind of trust yourself and let the passion of the project drive you, rather than you can't. I don't think you can control everything. I think you have to kind of go with it and explore and change tracks and just keep, as long as you're moving forward, and the trust, very important.
And
Yeah, I
some
think
people,
with oh, sorry, Mary.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, with Life Reimagined, I think that was, you know, from the very beginning. I just totally lost my train of thought.
Okay, it'll be back.
It'll be back. It'll come back.
I just wanted to throw in that sometimes you have to be willing to give up something that you really, really wanted to be part of it.
And that's
And,
hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened with Elizabeth Valerie and me often, that I thought my idea was really wonderful and they didn't. So, you know, I give up something, and to realize that what comes out of it is bigger than your own idea. And maybe you can go back and do your own idea alone sometime.
Well, with the Missing Student Project, I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
I just remembered what I was going to say, which is the beauty of with Life Reimagined, that, you know, I put out an idea that was really, it wasn't a playable game, it was a concept. And the fact that the project then became something that I knew absolutely nothing about was, you know, it forced that for me, if that was otherwise going to be difficult. And but the beauty of that, you know, especially because it had been originally my concept, was the joy of watching how other people interpret your concept and what they do it with it and how they run with it. And I'll tell you that it has been, you know, to work with a bunch of young people in particular that understand how things need to work together in order to get where we need to go in the future has been, you know, there's just so much hope in seeing that happen. But one way to make sure you stand out, stand back from things is to jump into something that you don't know everything about.
Well, it occurs to me that doing some kind of gaming about flooding in your community might be kind of an interesting, a playful, interesting approach, something for children or young people.
It's a growing area. In fact, there was a indie game jam at University of Washington. It's amazing the kinds of games people are making to look at things like sea level rise, and it really, you know, the imaginations of people who know that their future is going to depend on understanding things. It really is a whole nother genre.
I do think being able to morph your vision. I mean, when KK and I talked about the Missing Student Project, we had this vision of it spread out like it was on the City College campus. The state capitol wouldn't let us pound rebar into the ground. We created an interior structure, and so all we need to do is just put rebars and then stick the statues on top. But they had a sprinkling system, so by going to the carts was absolutely nothing close to what we had originally envisioned as the artistic aspect of the project. But it facilitated the mobility of it, and you had to drive a semi to move that project around. But once the carts were put on wheels, it gave it actually quite a bit more flexibility than we had originally designed it as. So, you know, change, accommodation.
Also, it depends how much of the artists involved want to be makers, because a lot of this is conceptual planning and organizing and checking and fundraising or whatever. So one has to kind of make that choice. Somebody in Andree's window.
I'm going to kind of segue off topic a little bit from Leslie's comment about engineering, because Mary, I would love to know how you engineered that that spire to survive.
Well, we found a engineer who's was about 3 blocks. This is Susan Steinman, who's just come in.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
We're just rounding the question and answer series.
Okay.
So we found an engineer, and he donated his time, and we actually had to build a large concrete structure underneath. And so we had to make sure that it was in a place on the creek which would not either take away wildlife area. So we chose an area. It took us about 6 months to do that.
Oh, wow.
Some bowls and spoons.
Well, anyway, I think, do we have any other comments from anybody?
I want to thank everybody who came. I hope it was worthwhile, and because it was certainly worthwhile for me to share all of this with everyone. So thank yous for coming, and come and take our eco art class. But more importantly, if you are a woman artist, please join us with WEED. As you see, these are the kinds of things we'll be doing more of.
Yes, and I think Terry just said she has new confidence to proceed with the project she's involved with. And if you want to practice, WEED is actually a place to practice collaboration. We're always looking for volunteers and people who want to participate. So
this is Susan Leibowitz-Steinman, who actually starts.
Mary introduced me.
Oh, she did. Yeah, except that this is
our founder.
Founded WEED. She was one of the original 3 founders, And she has been doing tremendous work through the whole time. And I showed some of the pieces that we did together.
Andree is always fun to work with, and so was Mary.
Yeah.
All right, well, with that, I think we might close.
Yep.
Thank you all. very
I
much.
also want to say that we have recorded this, and we would love it if you could pass it on to anybody who might be interested in learning about collaboration. Okay?
That's good. I've had
Great.
some people ask about it who were sorry they couldn't come today.
Yeah.